South Africa saw a 23% increase in spending by international travellers using their Visa cards last year. And according to data from the first half of 2011, the momentum established during the 2010 FIFA World Cup has had a lasting effect on the South African economy. Mandy Lamb, country manager for Sub-Saharan Africa at Visa, will be taking us through now the current tourism spend we are seeing. Thanks so much, Mandy, for joining us today.
Thanks, Alicia.
Well, let's get straight into it because, as I said, last year we had spend up 23%. We've had time now to evaluate the first half of 2011. Comparatively, how close are we stacking up to the kind of performance that we managed to rake in last year?
Well, obviously last year was unique in terms of the World Cup in South Africa. We had that 23% increase in spend as a result of the fantastic tourism into South Africa. For the first 6 months of this year, in 2011, we've seen about $1.2 billion worth of visa spend in the South African market in terms of incoming tourism. And how that fares relative to last year, it's not necessarily exceeding last year's numbers, but it's stacking up relatively well and most certainly up on 2009.
So what did we get most right? I mean, how are we managing to sustain this kind of performance where we still have this debate on whether or not, markets like the US are headed for a recession or China is headed for a hard landing? How are we managing to rake in or put on this kind of performance?
Well, I think the World Cup had a significant amount to contribute in terms of the country's image, in terms of foreign investment into South Africa, in terms of safety and security and images around that. So I certainly think that that has created a positive sentiment for tourism into South Africa. And I think naturally that's assisting in terms of driving South Africa's profile as a key destination.
What about marketing and business plans that are better catered to international guests in particular? Just how much more succinct have we become with regards to that?
I think we have improved significantly in terms of this sort of data that Visa is able to provide to tourism boards, to travel agents and to entities. We've certainly seen over the last couple of years since we've been doing this travel intentions research that we're able to provide a lot more succinct data to entities such as the tourism board, who are then able to customize programs and customize tourism packages, etc., for incoming tourists. So I think we've certainly improved.
So what would be a targeting exercise? I mean, how does a retailer go about targeting specifically an international consumer?
Well, if we look at what our research has shown is that travellers these days are very much going onto online resources in terms of TripAdvisor, Travelocity, Lonely Planet. Those are some of the top 3 online search engines or portals that we utilise for travel. What South African tourist boards could do is, and agents, etc., is could focus very much on targeting those sorts of sites and working very specifically around key messages about South Africa, around payment tools that can be used in the market, so on and so forth. And so certainly online channels are one particular way that we're seeing a solid increase in the message about South Africa.
If we get into the nitty-gritty of it, I mean, who exactly is spending?
Well, interestingly, in the recent travel intentions survey that we did, it was conducted in the early part of this year, in Q1, we see that the most popular tourists coming to South Africa are from the UK, the US and from Germany. Also very interestingly that out of the top 10 of those countries, 4 of them are from Africa. So we're seeing Botswana, Mozambique, Namibia and Angola, some of the top incoming tourists into South Africa.
So nice to see that we've started to see now some interplay in terms of inter-regional activity as well, and not just those from abroad and overseas.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's go into it in terms of targeting new markets then, because as we've highlighted now, you're seeing regional players coming into South Africa a little bit more aggressively perhaps than they have been in the past, but with the likes of Europe slowing down, austerity measures in place, to what extent is South Africa making enough of an effort to target new markets out there?
I think there still needs to be a continued focus on new markets. I think we do tend to rely heavily on those key markets such as the US and the UK. And I think the scope is certainly to broaden to new destinations. The research has showed that why are people travelling abroad? It's certainly for things like sports, music, natural scenery, beauty and wellness, but they also are very eager to find new destinations. And so South Africa needs to consider that in the same manner, in terms of saying we need to search for new destination markets to attract incoming tourists. So I think we certainly need to work on a clear strategy around new markets and where there's new spend and capacity for incoming tourists into South Africa.
Is that primarily where most of the spend is being directed right now? I mean, where exactly are these spenders spending their money?
In terms of merchant categories?
Yeah.
So some of the most common merchant categories would obviously be your typical T&E space, so your hotel, your transport, as well as restaurants. We're seeing a good growth in retail spend in South Africa. You're also seeing that pick up, as I mentioned, in beauty and wellness type categories. South Africa is certainly becoming a destination for, beauty and wellness in that sense. And then your traditional type channels such as I say, retail and restaurants are probably the most popular spend categories.
I see. What's interesting is that we've had card holders decreasing their spending on airline related purchases. So run us through that kind of trend that's playing itself out.
So that relates specifically to once the tourists have landed in South Africa.
Yeah.
So obviously cutting out on the airfare to arrive here is quite tricky. But once they've landed in South Africa, we're seeing a lot more rail and road transport taking place from South Africa into safari lodges, between Johannesburg and Cape Town, etc. So it's more the intra-South Africa travel that's become more localized, if I can call it. And the decline in that airline spend is really where that's coming from.
And one can only imagine then opening up more opportunity for others playing in this space. Just to end off, I mean, the challenges you see moving forward in sustaining this trend beyond this year?
Well, I think that continuing to provide this data is going to be key in order for the Tourism Board and other entities in South Africa to really come up with, as you say, succinct strategies to encourage tourism. I think the political stability, the currency, all of those factors are external factors that, are very difficult for us to control. But it's just to continue to market the country, to market the fact that Visa card holders can actually spend in the country, that we're well advanced from an electronic payments perspective. Those are all key things and key messages that we need to get out to our foreign travellers who'd be wanting to visit South Africa.
Mandy, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks,
of course, Mandy Lamb is Country Manager for Sub-Saharan Africa at Visa.